This is your Chargers linebacker, Dan Henley, and you're tuning in with Chargers Unleashed.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LAFB Network. If this is your first time tuning in the show, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Dan Wolkenstein, welcome back to the offseason roster construction. Today, we just, I didn't actually say this during the last episode, but originally our whole concept in talking about when we were going to focus on the defensive line, we were going to be talking about everything. And then we realized it was just too big to really fit into one show to really give it good focus. So we talked about the interior defensive line in the last episode. Today, we're focusing on edge. And as it relates to the Chargers' current state of the roster, there are many questions as it relates to two players in particular. But how are the Chargers going to go into next season as it relates to their edge room, what their possible free agent priority is going to be, what they're going to look like, and then, of course, as we always do, we will dabble a little bit in what the draft class looks like and where the Chargers could be seeking help. Dan Wolkenstein, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I am good. Excited for the weekend. Excited to get to the combine so we can finally start seeing some of these prospects in their natural elements.
Yes, sir.
This edge group is intriguing to me, both free agency and the draft, because this really is kind of a fork in the road moment for this franchise with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa.
Yes, it is.
And so there's a lot of question marks of not just would they want to bring them back, but what would it cost? Who would want to come back? What would they get on a trade market for a Joey Bosa, for example? Could they trade Joey Bosa, or is he just going to get released? You could save a ton of money because of that cap space right now. You could save roughly $25 million if they were to cut Joey Bosa. $11 million cap hit for dead cap, but you could save 25. But what are you going to do with it? So a bunch of dudes in this draft that look insane as well. But before we get to that, Jake, let's talk about our friends after we hear about how you are feeling this lovely afternoon in Southern California.
I'm glad you fit that in right before you were about to say bet online. Good on you. Good catch. Good catch, Dan. I will not be giving you the business today. So congratulations.
How are you?
I am
Jake?
just fine. Now you need to tone it down. Okay. Now you're kind of going over the top. All right.
What did you have for lunch?
What did I have for lunch? Let's just get to Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. You think you know your stuff? Get in our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread for every single week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of up to $200K. When the game is over, head on over to our online casino and get on a game of blackjack or poker or on one with one of our 150 slot games. Head on over to the website today to get on the action. Bet Online. The game starts here. There you go, Dan. Now we can continue the show.
But I'm invested. What did you have for lunch?
You are not.
Need to know. The folks need to know.
Folks don't need to know. Why? Because there was nothing. So congratulations.
Now I feel worse.
Yeah. See, there you go. Now how do you feel?
Great.
Maybe next time ask a different question.
What out for dinner?
Jesus, Dan. Anyways, let's get into this as it relates to off-season
roster
construction.
You're not listening to me. You're not listening to me, Jake, because I was going to go. I had such a smooth transition for our next ad read, but you just butchered it because you wouldn't give me a damn answer.
Good. Now it gives you something to think about for the next 20 minutes or so. So let's see what happens.
Fantastic. Okay, yeah. Jake, the floor is yours. Talk.
Off-season roster construction, focusing on the edge players. Dan, if you would please bring up the board of the Chargers free agents and what they currently have. Woof.
Well, that's going to do it for Chargers Unleashed. Go sign a bunch of dudes.
Yeah,
we'll talk to you next time.
I'm kidding. Actually, as Dan had said at the early part of this show, it really is a fork in the road as it relates to two players in particular. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube right now, you can see obviously the Khalil Mack being the only free agent that is in this box as it relates to the edge players. Every indication that we hear is that Khalil Mack is going to come back for one more go with the Chargers. We know how much Jim Harbaugh wants Khalil Mack back. It sounds like the feeling's mutual. Obviously, time will tell as we get closer to free agency. But you go down the rest of this list, you have Thule, Bud Dupree, Traymon Morris-Brash, who's a personal favorite of mine, going all the way back to the undrafted crop of last year. I'm hoping that he gets a bigger opportunity this upcoming season. And then Joey Bosa, who currently has a question mark next to him because, especially lately, stories have been talked about. Dan and I talked about it on the Locked On Chargers podcast. Is Joey Bosa going to return, take a pay cut, or are the Chargers going to outright give him his release? Dan Wolkenstein.
There's a lot there.
Yes.
I'll start with the last part first. I'm going to throw a question right back in your court for a second. In what scenario do you want Joey Bosa back? Because, again, for the record, almost $36.5 million cap hit right now.
Yeah.
And dead cap, if they were to let him go, is $11 million, but they're saving roughly $25 million. So they owe that $11 million regardless. But they can restructure some things. But, like, are you okay kind of kicking that can down the road? Or do you just want to kind of rip the Band-Aid and just start clean?
I honestly felt that, especially after last year and all the retooling that Joe Ortiz had to come in and do as it related to Khalil Mack's contract, to Joey Bosa's contract, you've essentially restructured Joey Bosa, it kind of feels like, for the last few years, even going back to Tom Telesco. And you can't keep eating the back end of this money and keep pushing it back at the end of the road. It's just that pile is just going to get bigger and bigger by the time that you end up finally severing ties. For me, Dan, I think it's time. I really do. And that is tough. And that is honestly tough for me.
Yeah, it sucks.
It's tough for me to say because there is no question that when Joey Bosa has been healthy, he is one of the best edge setters in the league when it comes against the run game. His pass rush is obviously best for this team when he and Khalil Mack are on the field together. It's just unfortunate that we didn't get a chance to see it that much over the last 2 years. And I think when it comes to investing in this edge group for the future, because at some point, you know that both Khalil Mack is going to walk away from the game and Joey Bosa is either going to walk away or find himself on a different team. You need to find who the next guy is going to be to pair with Thule for the immediate future. And it seems like over the last few years, going back to the days of Brandon Staley, you've used free agency at best to kind of band-aid this. You know, the last outside of Thule, before that, the real priority that you put on this edge group was for Uchenna Nwosu. And Uchenna Nwosu, for his credit, the last year that he was with the Chargers, he had a very nice year, got him that contract. But at the same time, you went out, you got Khalil Mack, which in the big picture of things has been a fantastic leader for this defense, has been a consummate pro, has been able to put out great production even in his twilight years of his career. But it's time to start looking to who's going to be the next guy up. And I think that when it comes to Joey Bosa, for me personally, I know people share different feelings as it relates to his status on the team. But for me personally, I think it's time that you start looking to the future on how you build it.
And for me, it's kind of bittersweet because, like, Joey Bosa on the football field is incredible. Like, he's so good. But when he's not healthy on the football field, he's either a shell of himself or he's not there. And, you know, it's one of those, if he and Khalil Mack are on and are producing and are at their optimum performance levels, yeah, I'm all about it. But, like, with this, at this point, with especially Joey Bosa, what are you banking on any money you're putting out there for? Like, I love what he can do, but if you're putting more million and more stocks into something that you just are hoping you can finally get return on, there's a lot of, it feels like a lot of sunk cost. And so in order for me to be okay with the contract that Joey Bosa would be coming back with the Chargers, Like Joey Bosa would have to give up a lot of money. There's a lot of ego and a lot of dollars that's going to have to be set aside. And as much as you'd like to think, oh yeah, the Chargers would, or Joey Bosa would totally take a massive pay cut because he knows the Chargers owe him, or he owes the Chargers because they pay him so much money. No, that's not how it works. Like Joey Bosa has his money. And I don't think that his production equals the value that he's gotten on that contract, but that doesn't matter. It goes both ways. So I think it's time, because I think it's time for both parties, to be honest. And that's okay. And I hope to see Joey Bosa ball out. I'd love to see ball out. Stay healthy. Go do your thing. But I just don't know if this Chargers team can risk it on a player that has yet to showcase that they are worth it in the long run. No one's doubting his skill set. But if you can't be healthy, what's that adage? Like, availability is the best ability is availability. It's tough. And it's crazy. Already the second highest sack leader in Chargers history. Even with all the...
Yeah. Nobody is forgetting that. Nobody can take that away from him. And for the only team that he's been on since he came in the league, it's just unfortunate that it couldn't be more. It's still impressive when you say that, all things considered, how good Joey Bosa has been when he's healthy.
And I think I would, and here's the thing, Jake, and I don't know if this is a hot take, but regardless of if Khalil Mack stays or goes, I don't think that changes for me with Joey Bosa. Because either way, I'm looking at edge. So of the free agents that are out there, I mean, there's a ton of dudes, right? And we can go into the free agent class here in a little bit. But like, would we want to, let's say they do bring back Khalil Mack for a second. What's your strategy for the draft and or free agency? Are you looking for a starter to get above Thule and or Khalil and have like a three-headed monster with Bud Dupree as a fourth? Or are you looking for depth underneath? Like, what are you aiming for?
This all hinges, obviously, on Khalil Mack returning to the Chargers. If Khalil Mack does not return to the Chargers, I think the priority for edge jumps up dramatically. And whether we're talking free agency or the draft, because yes, there are some great names as it relates to the top end of the edge class in terms of free agency.
Yeah.
But much like we have talked about, whether it was, Trey Smith or anybody else, you're going to find yourself in a bidding war. So in the same circumstance that you would be giving Khalil Mack the big money, do you then make the decision to take that money and give it to another stud edge rusher if you're able to win that bidding war? Or do you go to try to find the future? And this class ain't as deep as the interior of the defensive line. So the priority is going to shift and everything will change dramatically when it comes to free agency and whether or not Khalil Mack returns to this team. How the Chargers are going to choose to prioritize that remains to be seen. Luckily for them, they got money.
They got money, and there's some guys here, Jake, in the free agency pool that they can go after. I mean, Khalil Mack, I think, is probably the top edge defender out there, but it seems like he wants to come back. But Hassan Reddick is there, Josh Sweat is there, Malcolm Kuntz is there, Baron Browning's there, Chase Young's out there if you want. Old friend Azeez Ojulari that we've mentioned before. DeMarcus Lawrence is out there, Dante Fowler, Matthew Judon. There's a bunch of dudes out there. So is it a matter of, there's Joshua Uche as well. Like, I'm fascinated to see what this team does from a roster building perspective, because this is a premium position that costs a lot of money if you're going to go buy it versus draft it.
Yep.
And so we're talking 20 plus for most of, if you want to get somebody that's going to be a starter, that's going to be remotely close to the Joey Bosa tier when healthy, 20, 25, 30 is the range that you're looking at. If they don't bring back Khalil, I could see it. But I just can't see them doing it twice.
Yeah. I think that the most practical idea for the Chargers in terms of how they're going to spend their money, because obviously they need to spend it in other places, but for Khalil Mack's sake, for the Chargers' sake, for the deal that makes sense to everybody is you bring Khalil back on a very short-term deal, probably what you would normally throw out there for maybe like a franchise tag deal for 1 year and a good amount of money for that 1 year deal that you would normally see.
Yeah, probably 20, 25, probably. Some of that range.
So that's one that makes the most sense to me in terms of, a good amount for Khalil Mack to bring him back, because obviously he's now making the choice to do it. He's not going to walk away from the game. And for the Chargers, both short term and the long term, it sets them up nicely as well.
Are you comfortable doing that? Like, would you do a 2? I think they have like a 2-year 40 is like the rough estimate according to SpotTrack for Khalil Mack.
I mean, we all know when it comes to just contracts like these, and especially ones when you're talking about seasoned veterans that are only going to be playing for a short-term deal, it can become a little bit fuzzy. But for Khalil Mack, I mean, you're not going to ignore the production that he's given you over the last 2 years. Neither is he. So is it going to be sizable? Sure. I could see a possibility of a 2-year deal. Maybe you front load it on everything, so it's not much of a cap hit against you when it ultimately walks away. But the Chargers can get creative with this in terms of how they want to work the numbers if they're able to put something together for Khalil Mack. So again, sizable contract, short term, whatever it ends up being, they'll be able to figure it out, something that works for both sides, because it definitely sounds that both parties are mutual in their desire to come back together for one more run.
Yeah, I would be curious. Baron Browning and Malcolm Kuntz are the two. They're both still young. They're both just 26 years old. Malcolm Kuntz is coming off an injury last year, but he had 8 sacks in 2023.
Yep.
He's one to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
Baron Browning, I think he was 6th in pass rush win rate. Again, just 26. So if you're looking for someone to bring in ascending players, like those are names that I like. Otherwise, like you can go back to the older crew. I'm curious what Chase Young will get. Speaking of younger, but I'm fascinated to see. It's wild to me that Khalil Mack's 34, right? You've got Hassan Reddick's going to be 31. You've got guys here that have been around the block for a bit. DeMarcus Lawrence is going to be 33. Dante Fowler, 31. Matthew Judon, 33 this year. I mean, there's some guys up there in age. I don't know if that's the way the Chargers are going to go. I just don't see it.
Yeah, and I understand the logic behind it, Dan. I mean, remember just a year ago when we thought that there would be no way that Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa were going to be able to return together. We thought at least one of them was going to be gone in order for the Chargers to get underneath that cap space. Thankfully for them, they were able to both restructure and make something work to get the Chargers under the cap. And then you go out and you sign Bud Dupree to a 2-year deal. So in essence, as it relates to free agency in terms of spending money, the Chargers did that with the edge position last year. So now you're going into year 3 with Thule. Are you going to do it again? And again, the only situation that I could see personally that makes the most sense in terms of spending money would be to get Khalil Mack back. Now, does Khalil want to come back to the Chargers for one more run, or does he want to go for a ring? That's the biggest question. That'll be the big determination on whether or not he wants to return.
But that might be with LA.
It very well could be. It very well could
That might be a homer take, but that might be what they might be selling.
Look, it very well could be. Again, I still think that Khalil Mack, right now, February 21st, that Khalil Mack will be back with the team. That's what I'm expecting. But once again, as I said earlier, you need to start prioritizing for the future. And yes, everything that I just said completely turns on its head if Khalil Mack does not end up returning. The priority for edge in that circumstance, whether it be free agency or the draft, shoots up dramatically.
So free agency starts here pretty soon. The draft obviously is in April. Let's two different trees here for a sec. Let's go down the Khalil Mack stays route for a second. When do you think the Chargers go? When would you see them targeting edge? All things considered.
If he stays?
Khalil Mack's here. Because again, like we're looking at the top end, there's like Mikael Williams, Mike Green, Shamar Stewart.
Yeah, if Khalil Mack is back, you're not touching edge in the first round. I don't even think you're touching it. I honestly don't even think you don't touch it in the first 2 days. If it was me today saying that, things can change in 2 months, but if it was me today, I would probably say if Khalil Mack returns, you don't touch that yet. Maybe you go out and you find yourself more of a situational pass rusher in the draft. Mm-hmm. I still believe that.
Yeah.
Yes, I still believe that Tremont Morris Brash can be that. That was kind of his bread and butter throughout coming up through college. So I'm hoping that he gets another opportunity and crack at it. You're bringing Bud Dupree essentially back because he's on a 2-year deal. Are you still going to bring him back? Time will tell. I think you might.
And Thule. I mean, Thule's an ascending player. Like,
sure.
Don't forget. It's not like they have no edge players.
No, but there will be a future where Thule is your veteran as it relates to this edge group. And you need to start thinking about who the hell are we going to pair with him.
So, Jake, your favorite topic?
Yeah.
NFL draft year is coming up pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
Have you got a chance to look at some of the edge players?
I have, Dan, but I know that you actually kind of got a leg up on that over me because I was so immersed in the interior defensive line class. I just kept going down the list and seeing more guys that I liked that I didn't get a chance to spend as much time as I could have before this show as it relates to the edge class. So it's over to Dan Wolkenstein to talk about the edge class today, and I'll chime in where I can. Oh, chime. Perfect.
Jake, before the chime, though, there's some underdogs in this draft class, right? A3 selections that we might be looking at, right? We got John Joyner, who's one of my favorites. Look at Elijah Roberts out of SMU, who actually I really, really like. Tyler Batty, BYU, don't look now. Let's talk about our friends over at Underdog.
Underdog Fantasy offers the most unique approach to fantasy sports. With its simple pick'em style format, you can select players you believe will outperform expectations without the complexities or traditional DFS. The user-friendly interface and growing community make it easy and fun to play. Just go on Underdog and choose from a wide range of sports contests, and based on projections, you can select higher or lower on individual player stats for your chance to win. So head on over to Underdog Fantasy today and use the promo code LAFB to let them know that Chargers Unleashed sent you. Underdog Fantasy, get in the game and win prizes today.
So one of the things that makes looking at prospects with Jake so fun is we actually do things opposite. When Jake and I look at prospects, Jake will kind of start looking at the best prospect of a certain position and go down. I actually tend to go the opposite, where I'll look at like the very, very, very low end of the draft, look for the deep diamonds in the rough, so to speak, and move my way up. So in full transparency, I haven't looked at the top guys yet at all. I mean, of course, Abdul Carter, like you know, but like there's no point.
Let's keep it real.
Let's keep it real.
Let's keep it real.
So the names that I've kind of circled for myself, again, we're going to get into this way in more depth as we get closer to the NFL draft. But for some names for people to go look at, I mentioned a couple earlier, but John Joyner out of Minnesota, I literally have him highlighted on my phone here. John Joyner out of Minnesota. Tyler Barron out of Miami, who I think you'll like. Tyler Batty, I'm telling you, Jake. I think I said this to you earlier out of BYU, one of my favorites. Antoine Powell Ryland out of Virginia Tech.
Listen to Wolkenstein. I love this.
And again, these are probably definitely day 3 guys. But you're talking about a situational guy, Elijah Roberts at the SMU.
It's got to be at the combine.
And this is before we get to the top 100s yet. This is well beyond that. Again, like the edge position, defensive line, this is where the Chargers have an advantage. They have options and pick your flavor, pick your poison with what they want to do. It'll be fascinating to see though, Jake. Like once they I wonder what the first domino is going to be. Will it be Bosa or will it be Mac? I think it's Mac.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably going to be Mac. And maybe you could take a recency bias into it when you see what just took place with Elijah Molden. It looks like right now the Chargers are focusing on the in-house guys that they can bring back before free agency even gets an opportunity to start. So, yeah, I would side with Khalil Mack on that would be the first domino to fall.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. And this is kind of where the popcorn starts to come out because there's so many dominoes that start to fall as these transactions start to take place. And as more and more things happen during free agency, that then ties into what is available or what needs to happen for the NFL draft. The edge and the interior defensive line, both of these last two episodes, Jake, are critical for this Chargers defense as they kind of build out to try to repeat what they did with that 2024 performance. We'll see if they can do it. We'll see how they retool for this edge group. But they're going to need to do something. And I think that's what I like is that no matter what, something has to get done. They have to choose to do something. Choose to bring back Khalil Mack. Are they going to cut Joey Bosa? Is Bud Dupree staying long-term? They actually have to make decisions. There's nothing really here that they could just let it ride at all. They have to do something, Jake.
I was still hoping that as it relates to the draft prospects that you were going to talk a little bit about Jalen Walker over at Georgia. For those of you who don't know, Dan Wolkenstein was one of the biggest Micah Parsons fans in the pre-draft process that I can remember. And when I told Dan about Jalen Walker, I said, this is your guy to potentially look at and as it relates to Micah Parsons because playing both linebacker and edge, but a lot of people are saying that he's going to play edge at the next level because he's got the length to do it. I'm still waiting on Dan Wolkenstein to finally get around to watching Jalen Walker for this class.
Full transparency, I've been effing sick for the last week and I haven't done anything.
Hey, you know what? You know what's a good remedy for sickness? Watching draft tape. All right?
Dude, that's fair. That's fair. I haven't even had the energy to do that. No, it's been bad. But, Jake, we went through a bunch here today. Lots in store for Chargers fans as we get through kind of the roster construction, so to speak. Anything else you want to tell the great friends before we get out of here?
Much like I said during the interior defensive line class, as we head into the combine for next week, make sure you do not miss the defensive linemen doing drills. On the day, if you don't watch anything else for the combine, at least watch that day. Make sure that you are in front of your TV sets to watch that day. Because there are so many guys in this class, both in the interior and on the edge, that were on Bruce Feldman's freak list, whether we're talking about this year or last year, that should just blow the top off of the field. It's going to be exciting to see this group, along with the interior guys, run. There's a lot to get amped for as it relates to just football in general. Heading into next week, Combine, Indianapolis. Let's go.
We're getting close. The snowball is rolling. And before you know it, it's going to be NFL Combine. You got the draft. We'll have some special guests here coming up here pretty soon. So it is time, Chargers fans. But until then, you can find Jake at Jake T. Hefner, myself at Dan W. Sports. For Jake, I'm Dan. This is Chargers Unleashed, and we will talk to you next time. Enjoy the weekend, and later.